Hey, what's up? My name's Justin and welcome to 65 Drums. Today's another episode of 65 Questions. This is the weekly show on Monday where I try to answer a lot of questions I get about electronic drums that are like shorter in format, but will also make a really interesting topic to talk about. So let's jump into the first question from Brohobojoe. Are you planning on doing a video about the new Alesis Strike 1.4 update? And for those of you that don't know what he's talking about, that's a software update that the Alesis Strike drum module recently got. And before we talk about the update, I should mention that there's a lot of things wrong with the Alesis Strike drum sets, but the drum module is like the one standout feature that I really enjoy. Yes, I will agree that a lot of the sounds in there are kind of crappy. The new downloadable sounds and the fact that you can layer those sounds, you can create some really nice sounds from what's available inside of the drum module. They've released a lot of software updates because the drum module has been fine, but the way it reacts to the pads that it's been given has not been that amazing. So the basic advantages of this update is the fact that number one, the load times are faster. Number two, you got a better user interface. And number three, they give you a bunch of new kits. Like, it's not very often that a company will say, hey, would you like a bunch of free new kits? Just free samples, full drum sets and an update? Yeah, we'll just give these to you over our website. And then 6 months later, they say, hey, want some more free new kits? Here's a bunch of new kits. Apparently this was also supposed to help with like hi-hat triggering. And as far as the load times go, a lot of people pointed to that as being a very big upgrade. And I think it is a very nice upgrade, the fact that it loads faster. But the trick is that it's not actually loading faster per se. What it's doing is it's loading it in a different way, so it seems like it's already loaded when it's actually not. Load times aren't 3 or 4 seconds. Stuff is still being loaded in the background. They're just doing it in a more sneaky way. Next up is Andrew, who writes, hey Justin, do you think the pads and cymbals from an Alesis DM10 MKII would work well on a Roland T30 drum module? The answer is yes, the drums would work completely fine. As far as like the hi-hat and the crash cymbals, those would also work. They would feel a little bit different. Like the response from those cymbals would be a little bit different from like Roland cymbals. As far as the ride cymbal, no, you can't really get all 3 zones of the ride cymbal working. So this right here is a cymbal from a Cat Percussion KT4. And I know it might look different from like the Alesis ones because it's gray and the other ones are black, but this is actually the exact same thing. Both Cat Percussion and Alesis get a bunch of their pads from the same supplier, which is called Medeli, and it's actually only got 1 input on it. Roland cymbals use 2 inputs to split, between bell and bow and edge. And this just has 1 cable for all the inputs, just like a Yamaha cymbal. So in general, I don't really recommend using Alesis cymbals with Roland drum modules, but they'll all technically work except for the ride cymbal. Hey Justin, I'm a longtime lurker here and I love your channel. I own a Roland T11K for about 2.5 years and I've grown dissatisfied with the FD8 and the lack of the bell on the ride cymbal. I'm thinking about investing some money on a CY13R and possibly a third-party VH11 ripoff. The lack of the hi-hat and the bell just can't continue. I recently saw your videos on silent acoustic drums, the Zildjian L80s with Remo Silent Stroke, and I'm thinking about maybe selling my TD11 and switching over to a silent kit. I miss the acoustic feel. Any advice would be of great help. Keep up the great work. Thanks, man. I really do appreciate the kind comments. So I really appreciate the kind of situation you're in here, because the TD11K is a great drum set, very solid, but the problem is it's very bare bones, and you can only go so long playing on a ride cymbal that doesn't have a freaking bell zone. But yeah, CY13R, I totally recommend it. If you go on eBay, buy them used, the prices of those things aren't that bad. Now for your hi-hat, you basically have 2 main options. You can buy like a VH10 for $300. It's a VH11, except it's a little bit lighter and a little bit cheaper, but it's just as good. You can either buy that, or you can go the VH11 ripoff method that you were talking about. So this whole method is buying something such as a Go eDrum hi-hat controller, then using your actual, regular hi-hat pad you already have, and just going like that. So you have this on a hi-hat stand, you buy some like hi-hat hardware that you put right here in the rubber center, and now this will mount on to an acoustic hi-hat stand. It works great. I've tested it with a bunch of different cymbals. It definitely works. And then of course the second part of the question was, should you just upgrade the TD11K, or should you sell it and use that money to buy an acoustic set with Zildjian L80s and Remo Silent Strokes? So this is a Remo Silent Stroke right here, and the only problem with it is that if I just outfitted a full drum set with these, it would be fun to play on, but just hearing nothing over and over again, if I'm gonna practice like a half an hour a day, this would be really boring to play on after a while. Now you could fix this by having like an acoustic resonant head on the bottom, so at least you get some sort of like acoustic tone. You can also like tape this down to make it less bouncy. If you're kind of burnt out on your drum set, maybe upgrading it will save the TD11 for you and you'll want to keep continuing playing on that. If you want to go and buy an acoustic set and just put on like Remo Silent Strokes and the Zildjian L80s, that's definitely an option too. You have the flexibility to turn that into electronic as well, just by buying some drum triggers, slapping that on there, buying a TD11 drum module, or just keeping it from your TD11K drum set and selling your pads. There's a million different ways to go from here. I personally would go with the acoustic drum set option and then adding drum triggers, because that's what I've chosen to do behind me right there. But it's really up to you. So the next question is from Music Crew, who writes, "Hey Justin, what is the worst and best parts of electronic drums? By the way, great video. Hey, thanks for the really kind comments, and it was cool meeting you at Sweetwater Gear Fest." Everyone has very strong opinions on the role of electronic drums. My opinion is that electronic drums do not have a role. They can be whatever you want them to be, depending on what gear you buy. But if I had to talk about their core strengths and weaknesses, I feel like the core strength of an electronic drum set is for recording and for practicing. You can definitely use it live. Tons of people do. I've used it live. I'm about to go use an electronic drum set live really soon too. But I feel like the core strength, what it's best at, is for practicing and recording. And there's a whole generation of drummers that could have never been drummers without electronic drums. Just think of all the people that live in apartments or even houses that are like right next to each other that, you know, angry neighbors might call the cops on them, call the landlord on them. So they could have never even drummed without electronic drums. It's really cool that electronic drums are exposing more and more people to the world of drumming. And especially now that we live in an age where people are just downloading sample loops or just creating stuff in Ableton and not actually drumming anymore, I feel like electronic drums still play a great role in getting more people into actually drumming and not just doing something with a piece of software. Now, while I love electronic drums, I do want to mention that I'm a big believer that whenever you see an acoustic drum set, try to play it. Because if you just play electronic drums for too long, you can sort of like lose touch with the acoustic instrument. You want to be able to make sure that you can jump back and forth between electronic and acoustic really, really quickly. And that will only happen if you frequently play both. Okay, so jumping over to the next question, Jamie writes, "Welcome to eDrums, where the hi-hats are bigger than most crash cymbals. How can we help?" But seriously, that ATV hi-hat really looks out of place with all the other cymbals. So I have to ask, do you see yourself going full ATV cymbals in the future? So I totally get that little jab, and it's not like I haven't noticed it myself. I've got a 14-inch set of ATV hi-hats, and I got a 15-inch ride cymbal. That's completely nuts, and it's kind of like unbalanced. I'm slowly trying to make upgrades to my drum set, and the problem is, I'm a gear geek, which is why I run this channel, because I just love gear, and I keep buying more and more upgrades. The problem is, I don't want to spend $4,000 all at once. So what I'm doing is a lot of little upgrades, you know, bit by bit. I do want to get an 18-inch ride cymbal because obviously a 15-inch ride cymbal in that drum set just looks absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I can't just buy all my upgrades all at once. I'm going to have to go little by little. If I had a TD50 drum module, I would just buy the CY18. But because I don't have a TD50 drum module, I'll probably either have to go with the ATV ride cymbal. I feel like Enfuse, I think they have an 18-inch ride cymbal, and there's maybe one or two other options out there I could also look at. The next question is from Steven, who writes, "Hey Justin, what kind of drum throne would you recommend?" My favorite drum throne is the one I'm sitting on right now, which is the Rock and Sock drum throne. And I've got the version that comes with the little back piece, which was like another $50. I was in this quandary where I was like, should I buy the version of it with the back piece? And I'm glad I did, because when I'm doing videos like this and I'm sitting on the drum throne, it's more comfortable to have the back piece. And if you're in an hour-long or 2-hour-long practice session, you're going to want to sit back and just like relax as the bass player and guitar player fight over a chord progression or something. Next up is Neil, who writes, "Should you get a direct drive pedal or a chain drive pedal?" So this is a question that a lot of people have asked, and I'm not trying to say I'm sort of like kick drum pedal expert. My personal taste is to go for direct drive, but my bank account says go with chain drive. I wouldn't see a giant speed increase personally, my drumming style, between a DW9000 and like a trick direct drive pedal, because I'm just not good enough at double kick stuff. But if you're really into like speed metal and stuff, it might be worth the investment for you. And the very last question comes from Timothy, who writes, "Hey Justin, where do we direct our questions? I like the premise, by the way. Thanks, and also do more buy or pass videos on used kits." So yeah, I probably should have mentioned this last week, but if you want to get your questions featured in this next episode that I'm going to try to do every single Monday, just comment on any video because I read all the comments. Or if you want to reach me directly, just send me a Facebook message on my 65 Drums Facebook page. And by the way, if you didn't know, there's also a 65 Drums Facebook group that's gotten all the way up to 1,600, what is it? It's not followers. Members, that's the name. So yeah, go join the Facebook group and also like the 65 Drums Facebook page. That's the best way to reach me. It takes me a while to respond to emails just because I hate emails so much. And if you message me on Twitter, I'm not really on Twitter very much. So the best way to reach me is over Facebook Messenger or just a comment below a video. Anyway, have an amazing day, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in a few.